Oh, yeah. Welcome to today's Cichlids and Coffee live stream, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining me for an hour of your weekend. I hope you're having a good cup of coffee or whatever it is you like to drink. And let's have a fun, fishy hour together. I see we have a good group forming up here. Let me take a look at the chat. I know some of you are not on the chat, some of you are just lurking, but why don't some of you lurkers say hi today? Just pop in the chat and say hi, and just identify yourself as a lurker. Lurkers are appreciated and welcomed. Hey, Paul, good to see you there, buddy. Tammy in the house. Cat Sailor. I told you we had some great people here. Angelo's here. Michael's here. TA420 in the house. Hello to you. Very, very good. Robin is here, and Ron, and hey, Whip, and ex-colleague Kev. Good to see all of you. Is that Ager Gunnarsson? Ager Gunnarsson. Hello to you. Just start African cichlid tank, 420 gallon, but just 4 foot long. But it's 2.5 feet deep. Oh, that's pretty good. The depth is good. Greetings from Iceland. Wow. One of the countries I'd love to visit someday. Hey, Jeremy, in the house. Brandon Lightcap is here, lurking. I like it. Lurking and driving. That's cool. Eyes on the road. 3G in the house. Benoksky. All right, I'm seeing some new names. Maybe these are the lurkers. Fisherman 357, 504. Good to see you. Now 504, is that your area code? Is that New Orleans or is that 501? Hey, Kendall. I've got your aquarium, Kendall. I've got it queued up. I'm going to show it today. I've nicknamed it Pretty in Pink, so we can look at it. Hey, Brian, good to see you there, buddy. Lady T. All right. Very, very good. DSGF. At some point, I'm going to have to break down and get some glasses. That'll be my birthday present on next January when I turn 70. I'll get myself some glasses. All right, let's go ahead and do the official start to today's stream. Let's do it. All right, we are official now. Welcome to today's live stream. So today's topic is one that some of you will find interesting, and of course, when I say topic, I put together a topic. I put it on the thumbnail. I know some live streamers out there, the thumbnail is the same every week, maybe with a catch line, but I like to have kind of a focal point each week, like a topic, and then of course your questions and the chat just kind of takes us in different directions, and that's okay. So let's start off just very quickly here doing the usual. And if you're watching the replay, you can fast forward past this if you want. But I just want to do a couple very quick shout outs. Aquarium Co-op, thank you for all the backup. My friends over at Aquarium Co-op, Corey, Zenzo, the gang over there, they help out the channel. And I'd like to also invite you folks to use the Amazon link. Use this link when you shop. When's the last time you went shopping? Use this link when you shop on Amazon, and it will give even though your prices and experience will be the same, except for a very quick stop at my store, you'll be giving credit to the channel And once you use this link, it is active for 48 hours, so it gives the channel credit. So use this link to get onto Amazon and help out the channel indirectly. Very, very cool. Also, a big shout out to my wonderful moderators. I call them the best moderators on YouTube, and that's the truth. And also a shout out to Cunningham Tropicals. Josh, if you're here, hello to you. And use the code ben.o.15 for 15% off on fish, and ben.o.10 for 10% off on dry goods like the Cunningham special blend of food, which my fish are really liking. All right, now I think I have 2 more and we're done, and then we will be commercial free. And this one is a big shout out to my wonderful monthly supporters. These are my Patreons. Starts for as little as $3 a month and helps in more ways than you know. Details are under the video, and it is my garage gang. So thank you to all of you who are Patreons, and thank you to all of you who are subscribers too. You can't negate the importance of just being subscribed, liking, and hitting that notification bell. It makes a big difference. If you'd like some swag, some coffee cups, sweatshirts, t-shirts, the Teespring link will get you to my Teespring store, and there's a bunch of swag there. And so check those out. Got some tank tops for the hot weather, and of course the sweatshirts for the cool weather that will soon be here. All right. So let's talk a little bit about African versus American cichlids, and I'm just calling them with a blanket description American, because of course you have your Central and your South American, and I have a little bit of a mix. I think the Nicaragua, of course, is a South Central, and then some of these are just from the Mexico, Central America area, but there's some things that sort of jump out at me in the difference, and something that we should keep in mind if we're considering one or the other. And I know some of you already have your big fish tanks. Some of you have small planted tanks and nano tanks, and those are all great tanks. This stream is certainly not to take away from the enjoyment that one gets out of a little 5-gallon nano tank, or a 40-gallon planted breeder, something like that. But some of you want big tanks and big fish. And there's some things that I've observed now that I've been keeping them here side by side. I mean, I'm looking, as I look at you, I'm looking at the African cichlid tank, and of course out of the corner of my eye I see what's going on here in the American tank. And there's a couple things that jump out immediately, and one of them is the tendency to swim rapidly throughout the entire aquarium, back and forth, back and forth. I've noticed that to be more of a behavior with the African cichlids. They seem to be more of an open water swimmer. I know what is Lake Malawi, like hundreds of square miles. I mean, it's massive, but they seem to really enjoy swimming constantly. Woo! Pardon me. Some dust in my nose, but swimming back and forth, and nonstop. In particular, fish like a Buccochromis notitania, which I'm watching right now. I call him the Energizer Buzzy, the Energizer Bunny. Mouth isn't working today. The trout, I mean, all of them. The hawk. I mean, they're all just constantly back. Whereas these fish, on average, day in and day out, and there are exceptions. There are always exceptions, right? But on average, they tend to kind of hang out and just sort of drift. They're more into like a drifting around as opposed to a very active, firing back and forth type of motion. And you'll see this Vieja. At some point he'll move away, but he's not. This Vieja isn't darting back and forth. The Oscars are just sort of drifting around with an occasional movement of their fins just to kind of keep them on track. The Salvini just kind of hanging around that corner over there, and they were just fed too. So this is about as active as you're going to see them, and I can show you the. This is about as active and as much movement and activity as you'll see in this tank, because they were just fed. So they're scrounging. They're going around. They're looking for food that might have dropped or fallen and got between the gravel there, between the pebbles. And so, as opposed to the cichlids, they're already done with they were fed also, but they're already done with their scavenging off the bottom, and now are just continuing their back and forth endless motion from one end to the other of the aquarium. So it's a very very different way of behaving, and because of that, I think that you could keep a perhaps a Vieja and an Oscar in an aquarium that is 5 feet across, because you're not going to have that kind of constant back and forth. Now, everything I say, both in my videos and in my streams, are always one man's opinion. This is based on my observation over the last few years of keeping both species, both types of fish, right? So I think you could get away. He wouldn't like it as much, but you could get away with 125, a 90, maybe even a 75, and I think an Oscar would be, unless he got gigantic, would be okay. They would be okay. As opposed to African cichlids, where you really need that 6, 7, 8 foot wide footprint for them to really be able to really get up to speed and really kind of do what they do in nature. And still, even in an 8 foot aquarium, these fish probably never, especially something like a trout or a Rhodesia yellow, a Buccochromis, these fish never get up to full speed. They probably need a little more distance, but still they can kind of work those muscles, those open water muscles that are so important with these Malawis, as opposed to these guys which seem to be content hanging out in one area for very long periods of time. And the size of that silver dollar, oh my goodness. Anyway, so that's my first observation. The difference in tank size, I think if you're going to go with Africans, plan on having a 6 to 8 foot wide aquarium eventually. If you're with your American cichlids, you can stay in a 5 foot aquarium for probably a very long time. Now, on the subject of time, another thing that came up as I was looking into this subject was the lifespan of these fish. Now, this is going to be, there's a lot of moving parts here. There are a lot of things to unpack, right? Water conditions, food quality, the stock that you're buying, right? The quality of that stock that you're buying. So, how old is the fish when you get the fish? So the amount of time that you're going to be able to spend with these fish, from what I can tell in looking through blogs out there and comments, is that your American cichlids on average tend to live a bit longer in captivity. Now, this is different, right, than in the wild. In the wild, some of these fish are going 20 years. But in captivity, like I went to one blog, and I'm not really sure how accurate this is, right? Everything you read on and hear on the internet, you take with a grain of salt. But one person said that they had been keeping cichlids for a while, African cichlids, and that they were seeing an average lifespan of about 6 years in captivity. So that's a relatively short period of time where it's not uncommon to run across somebody who's keeping Americans, and they'll say, I've had this fish for 12 years. I've had this fish for 15 years. Not that uncommon. Now, there are exceptions, like, of course, the frontosa, which I bring up fairly regularly. Frontosas can go 20, 30 years, right? But it seems like lifespan on the Americans is longer. So if you want a longer living fish, you're probably going to find that to be more the case. Like you look at this little green tear up here, if I can get him to come over here, or there's a little Jack Dempsey over here. You can have these fish for years, and they're still a third of where they're going to end up. They're kind of a slow growing, and so you can end up with a 10 to 12 year, lifespan there, just by looking at. It takes about 7, 8 years just to get them up to full size, right? Whereas some of these fish just explode. Oscar was very fast, but Jack Dempsey and green tear, very slow growers, and very often slow growing can equate with a sort of longer lifespan. You see this sometimes with dogs. Your much bigger breeds can have shorter lifespans, right? You see a Chihuahua that's 25 years old, but your St. Bernards go 9 or 10 years, right? And very different size of dog, very different growth rate. Don't think that's the case with humans. So lifespan, also your now again, this is anecdotal. This is my experience, right, with these two types of fish. But I have found in general that the Americans are overall a bit calmer. In the African cichlids, I find that the haps in general are calmer, but but I haven't had fish murders among the American cichlids like I have had among the Malawis. I don't know how many fish have been killed by Malawis under my care. A dozen or more, maybe, that were destroyed, like were okay the night before and destroyed the next morning. Relatively peaceful now after I took out that eye biter, but I think I just saw a silver dollar eat a piece of plastic plant. But at any rate, it's going to give you a stomachache, dude. So on average, now keep in mind, the sample of fish that I have currently, I don't have dovies, right? Jaguars, Midas. I don't have some of these notoriously enormous that end up in one aquarium by themselves. And there are exceptions. I mean, if I put that big male red tear in here, I would have chaos. So, but day in, day out, on average, I have found these fish, the Americans, to be a bit calmer, a bit more chill than the African cichlids. So if you're concerned about aggression and you're concerned about the footprint that you can dedicate to an aquarium, I would say seriously consider Americans. If you don't mind aggression, if you have the temperament that and maybe an extra hospital tank that you can put a tank in right away, or take an overly aggressive fish out, if you have the space for that, you have the 6 to 8 foot or wider space for an aquarium, African cichlids for sure. Now, in the area of overall shape and beauty, this is a tough one. Very, very tough one. I'm looking at that fire hap. I'm looking at that red empress, at that rhodesiae yellow, the bucco, the hawk. Striking fish, beautiful fish. Very different, kind of a blended coloration, some patterns, some variety in shape. The majority of them are a longer, usual type of cichlid shape. But with these guys here, they have a bit of an advantage, and I'll tell you what it is. One, there seems to be a broader variety in shape. The shapes, the choices of shape, like the shape of a geo versus the shape of a silver dollar versus the shape of a severum versus the very different, also very different patterns. Look at the pattern on this Oscar compared to a green tear or even the severum. Very different patterns. Some are sort of geometric circles, and others are stripes, and so you have a lot going. Can you see him holding that little piece of plastic plant? Anyway, so there's a lot going on here. And then you get into fish like the Salvini, who's been really shy back in the corner here. Maybe I can get her to come out here. But the Salvini, you're starting to get into a color pattern and a brightness of color that is comparable in some ways to saltwater. Now, yes, there are some African cichlids that you could say, like your red empress. Your red empress has a color pattern that someone would say looks like saltwater fish. Some of your peacocks, right? Your flavescents, your ruby reds, things like that. People could look at that and go, wow, that's like a saltwater fish, right? So there are some beautiful examples in both types, but I think you're going to get more variety. Look at that chocolate. Look at the firemouth back there, if you can see it. It's albino tiger Oscar. You're going to get a bit more variety, I think, in shape and color. Look at these guys. So, again, just things to consider. And the other advantage that American cichlids have is that when you go and pick your fish, and let's say you're growing them out, you're going to get a beautiful colored fish, whether it's a male or a female. With your African cichlids, I know there are very few exceptions, maybe among Mabuna, but with your African cichlids, your females are going to end up gray and drab, and your males are going to be the spectacular fish, right? So that is a big advantage if you're growing out, if you're buying them small and to save money, and then you want to like get the pick of the litter. They're all going to be colorful. And in the case of African cichlids, that's not going to be the case. You're going to have, let's say you buy 5, and let's say you're lucky and 3 of them are male. One of them is a spectacular example. You end up with 2 drab gray females. Unless you're breeding, then that's a whole different story, right? And some people say you'll get the best color if you have some females in the tank. I have found that the few times that I've made the mistake of having some females in my all-male tank, I've had a lot of aggression. Competition, right? They have that, they're trying to win the heart of that female. Now, you also have a huge difference in breeding, since we're kind of on the topic. And I will give that to the African cichlids. The whole mouth brooding cycle is absolutely fascinating. And the fact that you can actually get the eggs out of the female, put them into a tumbler, gives you a real good way to control the process, as opposed to laying their eggs like on a rock. And even though I have heard there are some that will mouth brood, or at least allow the fry to go into their mouths, right, for protection. But for the most part, these fish will lay their eggs on a rock and then defend that area. And unfortunately, very often those eggs will then get picked off by other fish. But your African cichlids, they're mouth brooders, you can get those eggs and remove them from the mouth of the female, put them into a tumbler, and hatch them. So for breeding, you do have that advantage. Disadvantage, though, is that each brood, right? What do you call it? A brood? A clutch? Each group is not going to be as large. I've heard of American cichlids laying 200, 300, 400 eggs, whereas your African cichlids, I don't believe, would lay that many, and it only stands to reason because the female is not going to be able to get that many into the mouth for the incubation and then allow them to go into the mouth after they're born for protection. So we have some very, very big differences, but at the end of the day, whatever you prefer, diet, again, that's something, what you're feeding them, that's going to be something you'll need to research based on what's in your tank. I find that these fish love cucumber. My Africans seem to ignore it. I can feed these fish worms, bloodworms. They do okay on it. They don't have they don't necessarily, and again, of course, there can be exceptions, but they don't necessarily have the digestion issues that African cichlids are known for, the Malawi bloat. So I wouldn't necessarily put bloodworms, a super, super heavy, dense, concentrated protein, in with the Africans, because I'm afraid they would actually get bloat. So just another thing to consider, the sensitivity of their actual digestion tract. Now, care wise, I think they're both gonna need as much care as you're feeding them. In other words, the amount of waste in the aquarium is going to be driven to a large degree by what you're feeding them. So do you need to do more frequent and larger water changes with Africans than you do with Americans? Not necessarily. Depends on your filtration, depends on how much you're feeding them. So again, there's some moving parts there. If you're using high quality food that isn't clouding the water, that is very nutrient rich and bioavailable, you don't need to feed that much. You don't have to put in a tremendous amount of volume to make up for the fact that a lot of it is just unusable waste product, right? This is why I encourage people to go with things. It's a little more expensive, but you use less. Sarah, Extreme. I like what I see in Cunningham, Tropicals food, the Northfin food. These are nutrient dense, whether you're going with their spirulina and vegetable or their protein varieties, right? So let's take a look at your take on it. And by the way, I had another interesting occurrence in that 29, the 29-gallon tank that gave me that little baby red shrimp, which is still alive and running around in there. Now, I have a whole bunch of teeny fry hanging around the top of the aquarium. Now, I had rummy nose, rasboras, neons. Actually, I had everybody in there. Remember when I swapped the tanks? I had all my fish in there. So somebody it looks like somebody left some eggs behind, and I've got these. I mean, I thought they were micro bubbles. That's how small they are. And then I started looking closer, and I go, those are teeny fry. So I started using some of that Cunningham and Northfin fry starter, which is basically the size of talc, of powder, and they're eating it, and I don't know what they are, but that aquarium has given me more surprises. So at any rate, I'll see if I can capture them on camera and maybe include it in the next walkthrough. But just a little bit of a surprise there recently. But let's take a look at one thing here. Kendall. Now, if any of you want to send me a picture of your aquarium, I'll be glad to show it here on the live stream. Just send it to ben.o.cichlid, ben.o.cichlid @gmail.com. And this is the aquarium of our friend Kendall. And I just love the hot pink stand. And let me see if I can let me enlarge it so you can see it in its full glory. And I think this was in the middle of a water change. Yep, the water level's about halfway down. Very cool. So yeah, send me some pictures of your aquariums. And Kendall, since I used your picture, if you would like some fish food, send me an email. Tell me what kind of food you would like. Now, if one of you out there sends me a picture of your tank and I use it, I will send you some fish food. How does that sound? All right, so let's talk about the differences between American and Malawi. Let's see what you've said in the let's see what you've said in the chat here. I'm scrolling back on the chat, so the one I read doesn't necessarily show on the screen. I can't necessarily scroll back on the on what you're seeing. And Denny, I forgot to say thank you for that AV check earlier. I did see it. It did give me peace of mind, but I didn't shout it out. But thank you. Jorg Singh loves both. And I've developed a love for both of them as well, Jorg, for different reasons. I mean, I love them for different reasons. Some of those that I just talked about. But yeah, I love them both. TA420NK, I really have a soft spot for the central region. I just don't have the space for them anymore. And this is something that everyone has to take under consideration when keeping these kind of fish. You're going to need a big footprint. You're going to need a strong floor. You're going to need a lot of filtration, a lot of heater, a lot of heat, a controller, a lot of substrate. It's a lifestyle. Jorg likes the what are commonly called predator haps. Now, interestingly enough, there is no real scientific name called predator haps, but the predator haps, these are the ambush predators. Your eye biter for sure. We tried some of that in the aquarium. Your Malawi hawk, right? These are your Nimbochromis, like your living stone eye, who'll lay on his side and play dead and turn white. And when little fish come around to investigate, he eats them. Your gar, who'll go sideways between rocks with his big lips to eat fry. So these are predator and ambush haps and trouts who will run down a fish at high speed in open water. These are your ambush predators. Yeah, George, the Nimbochromis livingstone will just lay there and play dead. And that's how, and then until someone makes the mistake of coming over and checking him out. Kai Yui Kaufman. I think you're saying hello from Germany? Deutschland? Grub aus Deutschland? Are you saying hello in German? If you are, hello to you. So Whip's World is dipping his toe in Lake Tanganyika. He's always been an American cichlid lover, and it looks like he's moving over to the Rift Lakes. Very cool. Red frontosas, beautiful. Black widows, beautiful. Very, very cool. Are the ornate bichers, are those East African fish? The bichers? Am I pronouncing it right? M&C Aquatics, Dovi, and Trimac will always be my favorite. Had Africans too, almost 5 years, but I'll choose the Americans any day. Got bored with Africans. Yeah, I've never had the Trimac. There was a guy in Great Britain that had a channel. Real cool guy, very thick accent. He had a huge Trimac that was like a puppy dog. And there was a guy on YouTube also that had a Dovi that his video went viral, like millions of views. It would splash him every time he'd go feed him. So he'd be ready for work and then go feed the fish and then have to go change. And but I've heard they've got big teeth, so I've been avoiding them. Tyler Plant, first live stream. Love the videos, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. George Singh, Mabuna can thrive around a pile of rocks. That is true. As a matter of fact, Mabuna, I think, means in the Malawian, the African language, I think it means rocks or rock dweller or something like that, right? And probably the coolest thing I've ever seen done with Malawi's, with Mabuna, is a person stacked up rocks up to the back corners of the aquarium, and they created they would claim caves at different levels, like a multi-level condominium, and that created an ability to have a lot more fish. Yeah, Whip, you should hook up with Denny. He's got some great Tanganicans going on. Jeremy Moore. I tried African cichlids, and the aggression was crazy, and the overstocking. I made a mistake and lost all the fish. Ouch! It almost made me quit the hobby. I love the swimming behavior of the Americans. Yeah, I mean they're cool. They're kind of chill. If you know what I mean. And of course, Oscars have no fear. Yeah, the aggression, unfortunately, has knocked people out of African cichlids, in some cases knocked them out of the hobby entirely, or moved people into an entirely different kind of, like, planted community tanks. You know, someone just sort of like, that's it, I've had it. And next thing you know, you go to their YouTube channel and they have a bunch of, mollies, and I've seen it. Yeah, that's it, MC. That's the person. That he was just so much fun to watch. Andy Woods, because he loved them. They were like his kids. I think he had names for all of them, and he had a pretty thick accent, and he was just a fun person to watch. Thank you, Lady T, coming out of lurk mode. Appreciate that. I think we've had a few folks come out of lurk mode here. Enrique, it really would depend on what you have in there. A 55 could get tight. I mean, when you look at the size and width about these fish, and that's another point that I guess is worth bringing up. I mean, you look at the actual bulk of some of the Americans. They're whereas the Malawi are usually a leaner, longer fish. You do get a lot more bulk as a silver dollar, which is thin as a piece of paper swims by, right? But you do get, in general, a lot more thickness in the Americans. But yeah, you know, I would say if you had an Oscar in there and he started to put on some good size, the growth of that fish will not be restricted by the size of the aquarium. That's one of those myths. They'll keep growing, and eventually you'll end up with a problem. DSGF, a 125 with 40 over 40 Mabuna. There must be, are you getting a lot of fry? Because I know they once they get breeding, I mean, they can really get going. Not like convicts or guppies, but they really can get going on that. Was that the reason, Kendall? Did Andy Woods leave because he got trolled? That would be a sad outcome for a great YouTuber. You know, you want to be upfront and full disclosure and show everything that's going on as part of being on YouTube, but at the same time, there are some folks that try and give you advice, but there are other people who try and make you feel stupid or make you wrong. So you just have to be thick-skinned, or you really shouldn't get onto a public forum if you're not, because you are going to get a little bit attacked. I mean, that's kind of comes with the territory. Frank Vera, hey Frank, how are you, my friend? I also, when I had Mabuna, I loved their behavior. They were constantly picking up big pieces of substrate and carrying it and dropping it in the exact place that they wanted it, nudging it with their nose just to kind of get it just right, and then swimming off and picking up another rock and bringing it back and putting it in just the right place. I mean, they really are a fun fish. Yep, MC Aquatics, I remember his Doveye and Wolfie. Jim Jennings, I've had African cichlids for 2 years so far, and yes, they are a lot of work, but they are in the hobby. They are, there is no doubt that they are a lot of work. And if you want a very low maintenance aquarium, African cichlids are not for you. The go with a heavily planted nano fish tank. But don't go with African cichlids because, yeah, they are very, very much hard work. Kendall G, he said people were annoyed that he talked too much. Now that is so upsetting, right? I mean, I used to like hearing him talk. But then again, I talk too much too, probably. But if I let that bother me, if I let a comment about me talking too much bother me, I would have stopped talking in elementary school. I once found an elementary school record of mine, like a school record, and the comment from the teacher was, "Talks too much and makes animal noises." I used to, whenever she'd turn around to write on the chalkboard, I would make chicken noises and donkey noises, and I'd cluck, and she didn't like that. I mean, I was really young. Okay, don't judge me too badly. I was probably 5 or 6. All right. Any questions for me? Go ahead and hit me with them now, and I'll go ahead and take them up. I have a couple videos in the queue. Not sure how active I'm going to be this coming week. I'm taking a road trip, a short road trip. I'm going to be driving from Denver to Nashville with my oldest son. So just a great opportunity to get a little one-on-one with my son and bring over some furniture that has been in storage in Denver from an aunt who passed away a while back. And we went and did the usual, right, the big estate sale, and there were some things that didn't sell, so we put them in storage, and we've been paying for the storage container for months and months and months. So now we're just going to go ahead and pick it up, bring it to Nashville. So it'll be like a 3-day trip. So I'm not sure, I don't think I'll be doing much video content creation. Maybe I'll do a few this weekend that I can then post during the week, but we'll see where that goes. Well, there you go. And again, everything I say is limited by the extent of my experience. I mean, Jeremy's had some serious aggression issues with Americans. So yeah, that's going to happen. Kendall, Geos, Akaras, Angels. Yeah, I think it would be okay. I think it would be. There are some Geos that get pretty large, but I mean these Geos here are pushing 7 inches. I think 6 inches, 6 to 7. There's one back here. So. But yeah, I think a 55 is kind of deceptively a good size. 75 might be a little better, but 55 I think would work. All right. Any other questions? Go ahead and start them with ben.o.cichlid. That way they'll jump out at me. I will try and get done the auto top-off. The auto top-off review video. I got sent that auto top-off from Higer, and I'm going to be putting it into use. But watch for that. It's auto top-offs can be used for aquariums that have an evaporation issue. They can also, in my case, be used to keep sumps at the right level so that the water level doesn't go below the actual pump and possibly burn out the pump. So they can come in really handy. So watch for that, an auto top-off video from my friends at Higer. I also shot some footage I also shot some footage of my first cleaning of that Higer hang-on back, and I might share that. It's sometimes you have a video and it's like it's okay, but might be worth sharing. If anything, you'll get an idea of how I clean a hang-on back filter, and also you'll see just how much crud and waste in 3 weeks that hang-on back was able to pull out of that aquarium. Now, granted, it's in a bit of a dump. I mean, the aquarium that it's in is full of plecos that are being grown out, and you folks know plecos are pigs. And so that aquarium, that little 20-gallon rimless, its nickname is the pig pen. And so that's where that filter's been working, and it's been working really, really hard. So keep an eye on that video. For that video, I'm debating whether to release it or not. We'll see. We'll see. Do you folks want to see the cleaning of a hang-on back filter? Let me know in the chat. There you go. Denny's on his way with his Shelleys and his Tanganicans. Of course, Denny's one of our wonderful moderators. Along with Whip and Jerry and GP and the rest of the gang. I don't see Salient here today. We're missing a couple moderators, probably doing something. It is Saturday. Cat Sailor, yes for the HOB. All right. Yeah, I tell you, it's what was inside that filter was shocking to me. It reminded me of some of you know Jay Wilson, who's currently working for Cichlids. These guys. But he said that it was he opened a canister filter one time, and he said it reminded him of like a hippo had taken a dump in his canister filter, and I think he hadn't cleaned it for like a year or something. And so, yeah, that the cartridges in that hang-on back were like a hippo dump caliber. So, all right. Enrique and George and Kendall and Kent having a good old conversation there, along with Jeremy and Whip World. And Whip, that little baby red tear, that female red tear is doing wonderful. I'm going to be probably taking the plecos out of there so that it's just her. And because the plecos, again, they make a mess in that little 5-gallon. Even though I have a hang-on back and a sponge filter in that little 5-gallon where she's doing her quarantine. And then I really do think I'll put her in the 90 and let her put on some size there. She's getting a nice red tint and some little color spots on her body. I mean, I think, she's going to be very cool. And again, fingers crossed, we'll make sure she's a female. We don't know. We won't know till we know, right? So, but again, stressing that point, with Americans, you're going to get a beautiful fish one way or the other. And interestingly enough, in complete opposite of African cichlids, sometimes in the American cichlids, your females are the most beautiful. And certainly you can say that for the female Salvini with the red belly and the female red tear. The females are the more beautiful, whereas the males can also be beautiful, but not quite as striking color-wise, but will usually have a size advantage. All right. Angelo hits me with a super chat. Thank you, my friend. For those of you not familiar, super chats are a great way to help the channel, apart from subscribing, hitting the bell, and also doing a becoming a Patreon Garage Gang member. Those are all great ways to help the channel, and it's very appreciated. Thank you, Angelo. That is appreciated. All right. Any other questions for me? Well, I didn't see this before. What a cool name. Trout of Control. Trout of Control. Watching us from Germany. Very, very cool. Love it. Love that name. Trout of Control. All right, folks. So, with that in mind, I think this would be a good time for us to go ahead and do a wind down. I want to thank all you wonderful people for joining me here on Saturday. I will be back this coming Saturday. So I don't think unless something wild happens on the road trip, I should be here in plenty of time to come up with something for this coming Saturday. Let your friends know about the live stream. Share it with everybody so we get some views after it uploads. Sometimes the live streams upload. I think what happens is people will look at the topic. It looks interesting, but then they see that it's an hour long and they go, I don't want to make that kind of a commitment. So I get it. But promote the live streams on any groups you belong to, and let's get a little more action after viewing. That would be greatly appreciated. So with that being said, I think we will go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you. If I missed any super chats, I'm sorry, but thank you. Thank you for yours, Angelo. Thank you to my wonderful moderators, all of you who subscribed, watched, gave the video a thumbs up. All you lurkers who showed yourselves, thank you so much for lurking. You are appreciated. And there you go. Thank you, my friends. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.